Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's discussion, and I believe it's going to be a very, engaging one. Just confirm that you can hear me, can someone just confirm that we can hear me? Software, can you hear me? It's all I can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'm super comfortable that our audience can hear me. Now, for those of us that will not be speaking, I think we can just go ahead and disable our video so we can focus on the people that will be, speaking today. Once again, my name is Emmanuel for everyone joining us, and Emmanuel Nosami, I'm the lead partner at Cardinal Professional Services, LLP. Today, we have curated a conversation that we strongly believe the people in the room will find very value-adding, especially for businesses that are interested in, unlocking business growth. You will agree with me that, it's not just enough to be doing business without an expectation to, grow the business into something that is sustainable and that can, even last beyond the owner of the business. So what we have designed to discuss today is something that we equip you, as a business owner or as an already existing business, or as the case may be, even a business startup, what you need to get your business on that path of growth. And we have gathered, people from the industry, with relevant experience to, engage us in this conversation and help us, make sense of everything. Just to backtrack a bit, this webinar is being sponsored on the platform of Cardinal Professional Services, a consulting firm that is, positioned to meet all your consulting need. Whatever your consulting need is, you can reach out to us earlier. In the meeting, we display some of our, social media collaterals where you can follow us, and we are going to be showing it yet once again in the course of this conversation, and you can you can follow us on all our platforms and also see to it that you scan the QR code on your screen so that you don't miss out on any update that we will be, sharing, for the purpose of your business or your endeavors. We also understand that we have mixed audience in the room, and some people have created some questions that they would like us to attend to, while they're registering to be part of this session. So we have managed or aggregated those questions and grouped them in a way that, we can make sense of everything. So look at your screen. I believe you can see the QR code. You can follow us on all our social media channels on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and you will find value-adding content, for your everyday business, use. Also, we have also created a WhatsApp channel for SMEs and MSMEs, where we'll be dropping useful tips and materials that will be needed for your everyday use. You can also scan the QR code to be part of that. And the last QR code you can see on your screen is our general WhatsApp channel, where everything that is happening with Cardinal Professional Services, you can catch up with us real time on our updates. So thank you once again for joining us for today's conversation. Today we'll be discussing leveraging effective compliance and governance framework for business growth. And before we dive into the conversation, you can see that we have seasoned panelists that have been outlined to help us, make sense of this conversation, and I'll be introducing them shortly into this conversation. We also understand that, the subjects of corporate governance and, compliance framework may be new to some people, and we've made it a point of duty to set the tone for the conversation. So my colleague will be coming up shortly for the next 10 to 15 minutes to help us appreciate and put context, to what we will be discussing in details today. You also have the opportunity to ask live questions, and we enable that, as soon as, the time is right for us to take live questions from our audience. So we want you to stay glued to your screen and set out every distraction so that you can make the most of this conversation. So I'll be handing over to Titilope Bakare. Titilope Bakare is a senior manager with Cardinal Professional Services, and she is in charge of accounting and assurance services. So Titilope, welcome to today's conversation. Over to you, please.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Manuel. So everybody, you're welcome to this webinar series that will on leveraging effective compliance and governance framework for business growth. So I'll be running through a short background information about this, and then like that, everybody just pay attention and follow me on this so that we can have a fruitful discussion at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you so much. So the topic, leveraging effective compliance and governance framework for business growth. In this fast-paced economy, I'm very sure there's nobody that wants to just set out to do business for just businesses. And then we have realized that it's not just about performance alone and then what you can make out of the business that is important. There are a lot of things that underlining frameworks that should be set in place for us to have a very successful business. And then beyond the local environment, the global view of what business requires is not just about just what you can make from your business, but ensuring that all the stakeholders are factored in for the ultimate success of the business. So let's look at this slide, for instance. Think about this. Like I said, it's that you're set out to fail, or you have a successful business enterprise. And it depends on what your outcome, the outcome that you're expecting is. Whatever the outcome should help you to put in place the required frameworks for you to be able to attain to either the success of business or failure. So think about this. And the success is not without its own rules. It might not be a straight thing, as in you have different setbacks at different points, but with all the necessary things that are put in place, you realize that you get to the end goal, which is a consistent and a sustainable, successful business. So it's not just a one-off, it's something that is consistent over a period of time. All right, so in the last decades, we could see that there have been brands that you knew about and then suddenly they're off the market, they're no more existing. And you wonder why these things are so many issues that come up around governance, around compliance, that even though some people trivialize it, especially when people are starting up their businesses, they're not mindful of setting up these two pillars. I call them pillars because they are major supports that can make or mar businesses. As we could see over the years, some of these brands have issues that are out there that I can relate to. So from this discussion, you're able to decide whether you want a thriving brand, just like these ones that we could see, the Amazon, Netflix, General Motors, Apple, and the likes. And or you want a business that your brand in some few years or so are no more in the market or part of history. All right, so now we have a few examples here of businesses over the years that these issues that we're discussing are their major what puts them at the major issues that led to their fall eventually, even though they look like they have promise. They set out like now FTX is one of the major cryptocurrency business. How it started was one of the second largest cryptocurrency exchange around in the world. But due to poor corporate governance, which we will learn about shortly, it led to their bankruptcy. Even though they look like they were really climbing high and their business is coming up, everybody wants to transact with them at all. And the loss was so huge that they lost about $1 million in customer fund because of inaccurate bookkeeping, auditing failures, and then their records are not transparent as they should. So we have some few lessons that we can learn from that. That if you have a very, very strong governance structure, it could help in doing this. So we'll see how shortly. And then because of the inability to be able to have a very firm framework for their corporate governance, it led to their downfall. We are aware of Intercontinental Bank is a major, major bank. Of course, the aftermath of the fall, let's say the pieces of what the fall led to is still around. You can see some of their branches around. It's one of the major banks that was, really rising very, very fast. And then because of this issue that we are looking at, the corporate governance and compliance issue, it led to their downfall in 2029. There's a lot of poor corporate governance, insider abuse, regulatory breaches, and the likes. And then that has to lead to the CBN coming in and intervene in this to ensure that funds are injected to stabilize the bank. And then it has to eventually be acquired by Access Bank in 2011. Like so, and then it's adhering to regulatory. One of the lessons that we learn is that ensuring that adhering to regulatory setups that we have, complying with them would help prevent crisis. And then promoting ethical behavior. One of the things that having a good corporate governance will help to set in place. It does not matter what the size of the business is, because you might be looking at, oh, these are big businesses. It all starts from the building blocks as you have a mindset of incorporating a good corporate governance, knowing that the end result is to have a successful business at large, and then ensuring that all stakeholders are carefully or eventually taken care of. So Interconnector, as big as they were, because of their lack of effective corporate governance, the requisite strong oversight that should be in place was not, and so it led to their eventual fall. Another one is Vodafone. Vodafone is not just it was in Nigeria at a point, but it's a global brand as a multinational company. So it does not matter, however, whether a small business or a big business or a medium-sized business, whatever any business requires should, as it's been started up or it's been set up to be a player within whatever industry they set out to be. Having these things, an effective framework for compliance and governance in place will be something that will help to prevent their eventual downfall, which nobody wants that. So as a leading business, Vodafone was a multinational telecoms company. Eventually, because of their breaches in regulatory and all that, they were fined for £4.5 million. And then they damaged their brand and customers' trust. They faced significant setback in their businesses, and then they had to compensate affected customers. So adhering to regulatory requirements, you just realize that the same thing are common to all these brands. There are infractions of that they committed in not ensuring that there's an effective framework for corporate governance, which they are committed to making sure that it works, led to these problems that could have been avoided at the long run. So what is corporate governance, and what do we mean by compliance? And what is the relationship between these two? How do they affect our businesses and the likes? So now corporate governance involves establishing frameworks of policies, roles, responsibilities, and processes that dictate how an organization's business are managed and used. Now, there are different frameworks, for instance, in Nigeria that guides this. How do we establish the framework? And what are the policies that will need to be set in place to ensure that independence of the company is set aside from their directors or ownership and the likes? And then we have a robust framework such that we have a stock of people helping to give value to the business by having a framework of policies, setting aside roles and responsibilities, who is handling what at different times, and then the processes that these things have to be taken so that the resources of the organization is well managed and then used. Effective corporate governance is essential for maintaining operational efficiency and enhancing security and controlling costs. So in every intricacies, all the process, things that will happen whether now or in the future are set in place, and then you have a framework of people that act as check and balances to ensure that these things are working based on the policies that have been set earlier, and then the rules that have been defined and responsibilities assigned to whoever is handling, and a well-defined process for each of the different aspects of the business, such that eventually it would be able to ensure there's operational efficiency, and then you are able to control the costs that the business may incur. And then what is corporate compliance? Corporate compliance is refers to ensuring that laws, regulations, and standards and policies that are relevant to an organization's operation are adhered to. So even though corporate governance are setting the framework, having effective compliance ensures that whatever the laws that guide the business, the rules, and all the policies that are relevant to that organization's operation are properly adhered to, as I went to. So having an effective compliance framework is crucial for unlocking opportunities and then avoiding penalties. We can be so much that can be a great blow to a business if found in such a situation. So it helps to unlock opportunities, avoid penalties, maintain customer trust, and safeguarding the organization reputation. We can see that from some of the examples that we made the other time. Of course, there are lots and lots and lots of it. It was this issue that led to different issues and creating different laws and regulations around the world. The case of Aaron and the likes, and which get into that discussion shortly. But having this effective compliance framework in place is important for us to be able to unlock opportunities. And one of the reasons why business exists is so that they can unlock opportunities and then be able to maximize their resources in order to make profit. So what's the nexus between this compliance and governance? Governance sets the structure for the company direction and control, as it gives a guideline on where we are going and how these things are properly safeguarded and managed, every aspect of the business. And then compliance framework ensure that laws, regulations, and policies are adhered to as when is required. So together they promote integrity, transparency, risk management, protecting stakeholder interests, and enhancing organizational sustainability eventually. So if all these things are set, if a business that is about to start, or as whenever they find out whether the size is small, medium, or big, you realize that having this in place as pillars, they are major support to enhance your company's reputation, and then ensuring that your business is sustained. The essence of having a business is to ensure that it's growing from time to time, ensuring that the progress of the business is maintained sustainably. And so that's why these two pillars, governance and compliance, are very, very important to the future of a business and for them to be able to be existing sustainably. So how do we, what are the import of this? Appreciating what the impact of what governance can do for your business. One, we say when we're saying that it gives a strategic guideline, a direction for the business. Most business don't set up their strategic plan at the word go. And then your strategic plan will determine how long your business will live. So setting up a framework for governance, you are able to define the strategic goals for your business as it's going. So that mindset, when whether startup, whether an existing business, or whether whatever the size, I'm emphasizing because sometimes you feel like, oh, my business is just small, and then why am I putting all these things in place? So it's important for us to appreciate that there's governance and compliance have great impact on the business invention. Then it helps in align and attracting interest. You have defined the direction of your business. You have set out what the business stand for, and the policies and the roles of individuals that are within the organization. It helps to align and attract interest. And then not just that, it helps to ensure that conflict of interest are brought out to the open, and then because processes are set in place, these things are not conflicting. So that's one of the impact that we appreciate if this are in place. Then it builds trust and confidence for a lot of successful business that we have seen around, and there are a lot. So, okay, we mentioned Apple, for instance. Over time, because of the processes, it helps in the output of the product. And before you can have the product or whatever customers interacting with the business for, the systems and the processes within the organization will lead to a good product or outcome for the customers. And over time, if the governance and the compliance work are in place, it helps to build trust for stakeholders and the confidence within the brand that the organization is building. Then the influence of a competent board. One of the requirements, according to all the frameworks, Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, and the other are ensuring that we have competent board that are not just streamlined based on the owner's interest, but they have diverse interests that can bring value to the business. So the influence of this competent board will help in align, not just as people that just say yes as to maybe the directors or the owners of business, but it's set up in such a way that value is being added from time to time. So it's something that, and if you have a competent board, you know that the direction, they are able to call out things that are not aligning with the defined policies and rules earlier before it gets to a point where things are out of hand. Then superior performance and innovation, because processes have been defined, because rules have been established, because we have policies, it helps to channel the innovation of the organization to be able to be creative so that those policies are aligned with, and then the goals of the organization are met within the resources that the organization is available to them. So I've been talking about size of business. We might discuss all the while, thinking about their relevance and their importance, or the size, how this corporate governance or the framework and then compliance, how it applies to them. Of course, there are a lot of things that one needs to consider, and some of the constitutions are this. The governance requirements of a business can change dramatically over time. Of course, as the business grows, you understand, but what's important is the mindset of the drivers of the business, the owners of the business, and their goals that they want to meet up eventually. So during startup, my business is quite small. Owners tend to perform they wear all the cap, is the manager, is the recruiter, and among different management functions are on one person. But regardless of the size, there's some things that should be considered, which are key in setting up a governance framework within an organization. And SMEs are not exempted. So like I said, the size of business is not as important as setting up a framework that ensures that business is sustained over a long period of time. One is strategy. Strategy speaks to the direction the company is employing, the focus that they have, and how to attain to these things over a period of time. So, and having your strategy sets in place ahead will help in guiding, not losing direction, not doing things because others are doing it. You are focused because you have defined the goals of the organization, what you intend to attain to, and then you have set in place direction, how you want to go about it, and the methodologies you want to use in attaining to these things. And the policies as to employees, policy as to how it relates to interacting with the with people, about compliance. What is your your modus operandi on how to attend to these things. So you have set the policy in place, the guideline, the direction for how these things will go. You have set the policies of how the employees policy, who do we employ, when are we supposed to employ some certain people, what do we need them for. Everything has been set out as to the policy to be considered for the business, for different aspects of the business. Your policy as regards your finance, your policy as regards your risk management, and your policy as regards your employees within the organization, your policy, different aspects of the business. You are projecting, having those policies set in place would help a lot in getting the business in the right direction for an effective governance. Then accountability is important. Keeping proper books is one important thing that we'll have to keep on. And not just that, having the competent board that we talked about, having them being able to check the activity of the organization, and then putting people that are competent enough to be able to see these things through, and then point out things or channel things in the right direction. So having those people in that hierarchy, you have a CEO, you have a board that can come together and make decisions about the business. So it's not just that things are being done without being checked at different levels within the organization, and at different points, what are processes that the business is engaging, these things are in place. Accountability. So, and then another thing is the report requirements. What are the requirements for reporting? Who are the people that are responsible that you're supposed to report these things to? So having defined this already, people that can impact so much on your business, if the right reporting requirement is not met up with, you have defined them ahead of time, and then you are setting these things in place ahead of, even before you get to some of them, before you even attain to those decisions, the policy has been made, the framework has been set up, so that as the business grows, these issues are growing with them, because we have a framework to be able to contain the information which is within the governance framework that has been set up. Then risk management. Risk management actually speak to things that can impact so much on the business and at whatever level, whether at the point of at the strategy level, at the execution level, and all that. So all these things will be defined ahead within the corporate governance policy or framework that has been set up within the organization. And then you know that the governance encompasses everything that has to do with including compliance. So your compliance framework has been set up such that the business is not at risk. And then the kind of business you should venture into, as maybe how your risk as to maybe financing the businesses and all that, what kind of funding you should engage in, and who should be part of the business, and then how not to venture much beyond the limits that have been set within the framework or the goals that the organization has to attain to. So all these points within the organization can inform a risk, and then how to manage this risk would have been set up within the governance framework as the business comes alive and is growing. So decision making is some important consideration to who is making what decision and why is those decisions being made, as in who should handle what. All those things would have been set within the considerations for SME within when they are putting up their governance framework. And it's important that these considerations are put in place for formulating policies or putting up a framework for governance, because they are very, very important issues that each business should consider, especially SMEs. We have seen a lot of SME, we have seen a lot of issues arising when a thriving or a business that's full of potential just gets shut down because of governance issue are not properly set out, and then things go haywire and there's nothing to continue because these things are not put in place properly. So these 16, they're not, there are major constitutions that SME should look out for in setting up their framework for governance within the organization. All right, so what are the things to the implementation acts? How do we execute the framework? As we have said that we have considered the strategy, we have considered accountability in formulating or setting up the structure or the framework for governance and then compliance. And then we have talked about how do we implement these things? The first thing to do is to ensure that you assess your business properly. Having a healthy assessment of one's business helps one to know exactly what policies or how to define roles and responsibilities and the processes within the business. So it's important you assess your business, see how what do you intend to attain to or what level you are, and how to scale the business in such a way that at one point in time, your framework can accommodate issues that are arising within the business. And then establish a systemic approach to governance and compliance. Systems helps to ensure that things are running properly. For every business that set up systems, even without the owners or someone, it's just about who is it's just ensuring that the right persons come into the business at the point that they need to come in. The right person come in, but when systems are put in place, you have an approach to these things that cannot be faulted. So it's just a matter of who is operating the system. So establishing a systematic approach to governance and compliance is important. At what stages, what do we do from what after each execution or a business process, what are the systems that we need to use in ensuring that our governance are effective and then the compliance are as effective as we expect. And they're not just because business does not exist alone. And like I said, it's not just about what you're making. There are a lot of stakeholders that needs to be engaged within the business to be able to make such important policies and then defining the rules, establishing a system that will work for the business. So key stakeholders like well, the owner of business, the major stakeholder, the owners of the business, and major stakeholders within the business. And then people, maybe the funders that are involved with the business, or the reporting, having to engage reporting lines. I mean, by that, I mean that regulators that could impact on the business significantly. So engaging them are one of the major ways or steps to take. These things are not just cast in stone, but they are things that you should look at in setting up a proper framework for governance and compliance within a particular business. And then benchmark against best practice and then update. You need to check about what others are doing, what is obtainable, and what are the best practices within the industries that or businesses of the same size that has led to the success of such business. And then there's nothing against seeing a good operations and then adopting such. So benchmarking your business against other business within the industries or of the same size could help a lot in implementing the right policies or setting up, formulating policies and establishing rules and responsibilities that could help in ensuring that the business is eventually successful and then resources are well managed. Then execution. After all this, you have assessed your business, established an approach that you have defined firmly for the governance and compliance, engage the proper stakeholders, and then you have done check against other businesses around within the industry that you are a player in, and then you have updated. The next thing is to execute, because so many things are on paper and people don't eventually take steps to executing this, and eventually it still boils down to the same thing, that the business eventually fail or as being in a position that it's not supposed to be. So execution is the next thing. Just execute and then go over it again, review and keep assessing. It's just like a circle that one has to go on and on and on. So my conclusion on this. So corporate governance and compliance are not isolated concepts. Rather, they are very interrelated because, like I said, in corporate governance, the compliance are defined within corporate governance such that you have ensured that your framework for execution or for an effective governance is set up within your corporate governance framework, the policies, the processes of ensuring that compliance are done as and when you are. They're not isolated, they're not concepts that are separated from each other. They are very, very interrelated pillars for business success. And adhering to both values, by adhering to both values, businesses, regardless of size, can establish a firm foundation based on ethical practices. So in adhering to these values, you realize that your problem is minimal because ahead of time you have defined how business are supposed to, and then it guides in ensuring that everything that the business engages in is based on ethical practices and they are transparent and they are accountable. This collaborative approach not only protects the stakeholder, but also prepares the road for a successful business, a business that is flourishing and sustainable in the future. Don't forget that the essence of having an effective compliance and a good governance framework is to ensure that sustainably the business is growing, not just for a while, but over a period of time. And then no matter what each is at the point, you have this framework being able to contain them to ensure that the future of the business is sustainable. Now, the demands of running startups or an SME often overshadow the importance of strategic oversight. Intention is, however, a must if growth must be unlocked. Implementation is a must if you want to unlock growth. So it's not just to put this framework in, because a lot of people have, they have great ideas for the business. They have set up corporate governance frameworks that could help them, and then you realize that at different points they just fall that they're not committed to implementation. So commitment to implementation is a must if your growth must be unlocked. And I believe that as we continue conversation within this session, we're able to ask questions and all that. So thank you for listening, everybody. That'll be all for now.
Wow, thank you very much for that powerful presentation. You can take down your screen now. I believe the audience are also taking notes, just as I was taking note also. Compliance, corporate governance, compliance framework is a must if you must unlock business, growth. There's this adage in Yoruba speaking, they say, it's not enough for you to know how to cook. It's when you cook that is when we can really attest, whether you really know how to cook, and what Titi has helped us to understand very briefly in the short time is to see how corporate governance, effective governance has helped some businesses to thrive, within the industry, while some are disappearing, in no time at all. I believe you don't want your business to disappear. I understand that some of us may not even be running a business yet. I believe when we get into the conversation, you have a better understanding whether you are running a business or not, And we have put in place very powerful speakers, that I will be introducing, panelists that will be helping us to dive deeper into this conversation. What Titi just did was to set the appetite, no technical jargons, no complex stuff, what you can comprehend when it comes to this subject and how it applies to your business. I will go straight into the introduction of my panelists, and the first person I'll be introducing is Adetola Adele. So Adetola Adele is a business leader and legal practitioner with 12 years of specialized experience in corporate law, focusing on areas such as capital market transactions, merger and acquisition, regulatory compliance, corporate governance, and company secretarial practice. In our role as the head of legal, compliance, and company secretariat at First Ally, Aditola provides strategic advice to subsidiaries, guiding them in identifying opportunities, managing legal risk, ensuring governance standards, protecting revenue, and maintaining full legal and regulatory compliance. I will jump for time. Aditola is also a non-executive director with First Allied Properties Limited, a residential and commercial real estate investment and development company established to provide premium properties carefully selected and built to very high standard, tailored to the needs of modern day property. Aditola is an emerging arts enthusiast, particularly drawn to theater and stage plays. She is a member of the Musical Society of Nigeria, MUSA, as a participating donor. Besides, she finds joy in traveling by exploring different places she's also an avid football fan. As our journey continues to unfold, Aditola remains poised to make enduring contributions to the realm of law, governance, and business, fueled by an unwavering dedication to multifaceted interests. Thank you, Aditola, for joining us, this morning. Okay,
thank you for having me.
quickly
Good morning.
introduce Babatope Oni. Babatope Oni is a visionary entrepreneur. He is the co-founder and chief technology officer of GigBank, a pioneering fintech company in Nigeria. With over a decade of experience leading distributed technology teams on the continent, coupled with extensive experience in the financial technology sector, he has dedicated his career to transforming the financial sector space in diverse ways. He co-founded GigBank with a mission of providing seamless and accessible financial services tailored to freelancers, contractors, and small businesses, addressing the unique challenges that face in the traditional banking system. Under his leadership, GigBank has developed innovative solutions that leverage cutting-edge technologies to facilitate secure payments, savings, and financial management for its users. His commitment to financial inclusion and empowerment has earned him recognition as a thought leader in the fintech industry. Thank you very much, Babatope, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, lastly, is no other person but Titilope Bakari herself that just finished the presentation. Titilope is a senior manager in the Accounting and Assurance Services Division of Cardinal Professional Services, CPS LLP. Prior to joining CPS LLP, Titilope worked in Baker Tilly, Nigeria for over a decade, garnering a wealth of experience in the areas of accounting and IFRS financial reporting, taxation, audit, and advisory services. She has led a number of projects in the provision of audit and assurance services for both profit and not-for-profit organizations. Also, she has facilitated the setup of accounting function and training of staff for accounting role in varying industries. Thank you once again, Titilope Bakari, for joining this conversation. And myself, your host today, I'll be moderating the conversation that we will be having shortly. And I just want you to, stay glued to your screen and as much as possible, take notes. In the next 15 to 20 minutes, the chat box will also be open for our live audience to also throw in their live questions so that we can also take them in the course of this conversation. So we go straight into the discussion, and I'm going to start with Aditola, to kickstart the conversation. Titilope has made a presentation, but in your own words, can you help our audience, especially small businesses or medium-sized businesses that are looking at unlocking growth? Can you, in your own words, help demystify, decode the concept of compliance and governance, for small business owners? Aditola,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yes,
hear you
I
now.
can. All right. Okay. Thanks so much, Emmanuel. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Titi Lope, for setting the right tone for this conversation. And nice to meet you, Babatope, and Titi as well. So just to demystify the concept of compliance and governance, and considering that is for SMEs, I just like to put it in a very, very simple form. And compliance for me is about following external, now emphasis on the keyword external rules and regulations set by regulatory bodies, governmental bodies, your industry bodies, and other regulatory authorities. So it's basically your company, right? Your business complying with these external rules and regulation. Now, I'm trying to do for a simple way so that everyone can understand. Now, for governance, it's basically you establishing internal structure, processes, systems for your direction, management, and the control of your business. So depending on any industry that you're playing in, you have this internal system and structure in place. Whereas for compliance, it's basically you trying to comply, to follow all the external rules and regulations set by government. Now, these external rules and regulation, the way I like to see compliance is to put it in 5 buckets, right? And this external regulation can vary depending on your industry. Take, for example, if you're in the financial services space, and if you tell me you're in the financial services space, I will ask you, who is your primary regulator? Are you regulated by the SEC? Are you regulated by the CBN, the central bank? Are you regulated by NICOM? That's the insurance space. Are you regulated by PENCOM? That's the pension space. So depending on the industry where you play in, your regulatory obligation, of course, will differ. Then also for compliance, it depends on the size of a company. Now, for a sole proprietor, like say, for example, Aditola Company Limited, and so like I just want to be, I'm a single owner, right, in the company. It's possible for that to the provisions of the CAMA 2020. My regulatory obligations will differ from, say, a PLC that is listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange or listed on the London Stock Exchange, if we get the point I'm trying to make. So basically for compliance, you are following external rules and regulations that are imposed on you by government or regulatory body and other regulatory authorities. And these regulatory obligations can be in different buckets. They can be your corporate compliance requirements. They can be your industry-specific requirements. They can also be your human resource or employee-related compliance requirements. It can be your finance and data protection requirement. Then there's another bucket where it's like a catch-off phrase, audits. So you have things around your local government levies and all of that coming into that 4 bucket. But if you look at it in these 5 buckets that I have, you have a concept of compliance. So if you think compliance, just think about external. Now, if you're thinking governance, think about internal. So the internal structure and process that you have for the overall direction and management and control of your own business. So, and for governance, you have to be proactive and strategic about it. Whereas for compliance, I know people will say you have to be reactive, but also there's the bit on it that is proactive, the things you need to have in place. So for governance, you have to be proactive and strategic. So you cover, it has like a broader management of your company, your decision making itself. Your decision making, when you're talking about your decision making, that's where you talk about your governance meeting, your shareholders meeting, your board meetings, your management meetings, whether at the executive level or whether at the general level, or maybe your founders meeting. If you're an SME, you're just starting out, you don't have these big names, right? So that we're able to contextualize. So it's just how you make decisions, your decision making, strategic planning, how you plan, stakeholders relation, how you're relating with your stakeholders, both internal and external. And what you realize is compliance and governance, right? There's this overlap. So to demystify it, right, I would say compliance external, whereas for governance, it's just that internal, your internal structures and processes that you have in place. Things around your decision making, like I said, risk management, strategy planning, and of course, stakeholders regulation. Thank you. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for adding that context to it. So for our audience, think about it external and internal. So compliance is what is the external forces that you have to respond to, while internal is your proactive measure to set the business in the right, direction for success. Thank you very much, Aditola, for that perspective on demystifying corporate governance and compliance. So let me quickly move to Babatope now. Babatope, from your experience, beyond GigBank, I'm also aware that you had some journey across, some fintech startups, in that space. And from your experience, what do you think are the advantages, of putting in place effective compliance and governance framework, from your own experience working through many fintech startups?
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. It can't be overemphasized what the importance is. And thank you again, Titi and Adetola, for the very good background and foundation for this conversation. I would say one of the very important things here is the confidence of your investor. Right? So you have a business you're trying to build, and you want to raise funds, for instance. How do you build the confidence of your investor, right? Because your investor would want to see what structures. You want to invest in a company that would not give you a good return on your investments, right? And it starts with proper governance. It starts with proper compliance. So it helps, along that line also it helps with accountability. You are able to document every part of your process. And one of the things I always advise businesses also is, to have a documentation first approach and try to, put a process to everything that you're building so that it's very repeatable. So I would say investor confidence is very key. And investor want to look at your old books, so you meet an investor this year, you've been running for a year before you decide to raise funds. Your investor will want to look at what structure you put in place the previous year. So it's always a good idea to already start from day one on proper governance and proper compliance structure for your business. So investor confidence is key. Then you have business continuity. One of the things that have helped, especially maybe me more personally, is you can use it to avoid key man dependency risk, where you have only one person that has the blueprint. In Nigeria, we like a lot of, I have everything in my head, I know it, I can get it done. But what happens is when this key person in your business leaves, then you have nothing documented, you have no process put in place, then you run into risk of how does my business continue when this key person leaves, or if there's an emergency, for instance, how do I quickly recover my business? This is very key, especially in finance. So if there is a new compliance that you need to become compliant on within 24 hours, it's the documentation that and that was a lot in my industry. So it's the documentation you've done before now that helps you make those changes and be more proactive as opposed to being reactive. Also, generally, it helps to reduce your risk. So from human risk, to your risk in your processes, to financial risk, operational risk. If you have proper governance within your company, and of course, definitely compliance outside, it helps you reduce risk. Again, I'll talk maybe more specifically about finance. Money must not get lost. So make it reduce your risk of losing money. As Titi mentioned, company losing FTX losing millions of dollars because of improper bookkeeping and all that. So it's very key to reduce your risk. You need to be able to have put in proper framework within your company. What are the processes? What are the repeatable tasks? What are you? Because generally, if you are not measuring, you can't track and you can't optimize, right? So what do I mean? You need to be able to measure every aspect of your business, from your financial processes to operational processes. You track every bit of activity done, human activities done within your teams, and then you're able to measure, then you're able to optimize continually. That helps you reduce risk, like if you have visibility. So those are like the key things. So investor confidence is key. Improving your business continuity by reducing key man risk, and generally just reducing your risk is very key advantage.
Wow.
This year.
Wow. Thank you very much. If you missed that, let me summarize it. Investors, boosting your investors' confidence, business continuity, mitigating business continuity risk, and also putting in place processes and keeping your records so that you can have insights, strategic insights into how to progress the business. I don't know if Aditola has some additional thoughts on that. What are the advantages of putting in place effective compliance and governance framework?
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. Just to write on the back of what Babatope said, I think the key point for me would be you avoid penalties, right? And I know for businesses, especially for maybe colleagues that are client facing, there's always this drive of, okay, you have targets you want to make, right? But for those of us in quote unquote back office, maybe legal, risk management, compliance, and audits, the way we look at it is, well, we just tell you, well, we might not be out there making the money, right, bringing the money, but what we do is we ensure that the profit that you have made, right, that profit is not eroded. So the guys in compliance, in legal, in risk management, they just help you. So we tend to call ourselves Department of Revenue Protection. So we protect the revenue that you make. Yes, we protect that revenue. Yes, you have gone out there, you've met all the targets, you've surpassed all the expectation this quarter. But those of us in risk, legal, compliance, and audits, we protect that revenue. Because what's the point of making, say, 100 million, and at the end of the day, you are paying about 50 million as penalty or sanction for not filing your CIT, your WAT, your VAT, or your returns with your primary regulator. So you reduce the risk of fines and sanctions by ensuring compliance with your laws and regulations. And when you do that, just like Babatope said, of course, you attract investment, because when potential investors ask for your audited financial statement, they want to look at the lines and say, okay, what's going on with this company? And also when you go to your board, when you go for your meetings, right, you don't want to go and report, oh, this month we were sanctioned, or this quarter we were sanctioned. Where were you sanctioned? Oh, we didn't file this as and when due, or we didn't even file at all because we didn't exist. So I'll come from the bit of revenue protection. And revenue protection is not just, it's good for all of us. That means at the end of the day, next year, we all go home smiling. So when you have profit sharing, because your profit has not been used to pay penalties and sanctions. So from these 2 points, avoid penalties, reduce that risk of, fines and sanction. And of course, you have the credibility. You can go out there to say, okay, that reputation is said that no, we're not sanctioned. It's a thing of pride when you're reporting at your board meetings or board committee meetings, and you're able to say, well, during the quarter under review, right, no penalties at all. So, it's also a KPI. So while we always say that, the business guys, you go out there, you get the brief. Those of us at the back, we help you to make sure that revenue and of course the profit is protected. And next year, we can all share the profits. Thank you.
Wow. Spot on. There is no shareholder or there is no stakeholder that will be happy that you are utilizing their value for penalties. You don't want to get into that. So, Titi was actually making a point during our presentation, on those businesses that were disappearing. Many articles must have written different things, the reason for failure. They did not innovate, they did not do this, they did not do that. But everything still boils down to how effective your corporate governance is and your compliance framework. Because if you have in place that effective governance, you must have seen what the trend is and what are the risks that you need to attack, as a business, So it's so thoughtful that, from an internal perspective, if you are not proactive with your corporate governance, and from an external perspective, if you are not proactive with your compliance framework, then business failure is looking at you like this. You understand? And you don't want to get there. What you want to do is to see to it that through your effective corporate governance and effective compliance framework, also you are able to unlock growth from your business year on year. And let me move to, Titi very briefly. During your presentation, you spoke about the nexus between corporate governance and, Aditola has helped us, also look at it from the internal perspective, and the external perspective, How maybe you want to add some thought around that, like from practical, maybe you give an example, so that people can relate on how, the activities of corporate governance also impact the activities of compliance framework, for the purpose of our audience.
Okay, so like I said the other time, that corporate governance is like the mother, both for anything that will involve, as Aditola has said, that compliance is external. Even if compliance is external, it's the inside that determines what happens outside. You have set the policies and the tone for what your effective compliance will be. So governance and a robust compliance framework, they are not just regulatory, they are very, very strategic for driving the growth of the business. So, and like some of the things that I highlight that the effect will be was it will help in giving direction to the business, having an enhanced decision-making process and a strategic alignment such that you have set a clear goals, responsibility, decision-making processes with the organization, and ensuring that these are aligned with your processes are aligned, your strategic decisions are aligned with your organizational goals. So even though compliance is different, but both internal and external compliance, ensuring that what you have set by the governance body, the board of directors or policy makers within the business, are committed to effectively being executed by the compliance framework that I set within the business. So that's one of the things that brought them together. Then another thing, and that has an impact on the business because it helps you to be able to respond to the market swiftly because your decision-making processes are aligned with your goals, and then there's mechanism within the system to ensure that those policies are being complied with. So and then another thing is that there's a lot of risk in ensuring that when there are disruption within your business that might be costly. That's one of the things that she mentioned, having to pay so hugely for fines based on late compliance or non-compliance at all might impact majorly on your business, and then might affect your opportunities for growth. So if the governance policies, the framework has been there, you have set the policies and there's a commitment to it, then compliance will be easy because it's the tone that the business sets that will determine how the business will go in ensuring that compliance is
Wow.
for regulators are adhered to. And then it helps to build trust among other things. So it's very important. There's a correlation between them if they are both managed well. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. Titi has summarized it. Once you get your house in order, you understand, you are able to mitigate the impact of the external force that are coming for you. But if your corporate governance is not in order, you may not even be fully aware of everything to watch out for from the external forces. There are many things that I have observed, with many SMEs and MSMEs is that, they don't even know that, as a business, you have to have a documented strategy that you have to pursue. So they just look at the industry. It's like buying a ring light and doing Instagram video. That is the next way to grow the business. And everybody is following that bandwagon and, what else is my competitor doing? Let me too go and do that. It's because you don't have a corporate governance on your strategy as a business. You understand? Because if you had said a corporate governance, you already have a framework in which you can operate, the limits for your risk management, not all strategies that you will be able to deploy, notwithstanding, you depend on the kind of brand that you also want to do. For example, now, if people are using nude dance video to sell clothes, you want to look at the impact on your brand. You understand? How do you want people to see your brand? You know, those kind of risk elements are very, very important for you to really be able to unlock. For example, I'm an investor and you tell me to come and, you know, to come and invest, and I look at your business page and I'm looking at all sorts of things. I say, my name, I don't want my name to be associated with it. You understand? So if you are not careful about sending the right tone for the business from a corporate governance perspective, your approach to market may also be very flawed. You understand? Because you don't have a direction. There is this quote that says that if you don't really know where you're going, everywhere looks like it. You understand? Like, okay, can I just pick on this, pick on that, pick on this, pick on that? It's because your corporate governance structure has not really, given you enough, guidance on how to do the business. Okay, let's move faster for time. I will come back to Adetola. SMEs, many a times they say, oh, this corporate governance thing is just too complex, board operation, or this committee, that committee, I'm just a small business. And how do you think, what are the practical tips that you can give, startups and, medium-sized businesses on how to start putting in place this framework without necessarily biting the cost of an holistic, corporate governance and compliance framework?
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. Just to go right into it, I have some practical tips on how, for of course startups and also small business, whether SMEs or MSMEs, on how to have this effective process in place. So the first point I would like to talk about is to compartmentalize. I talked about this earlier, but I think I would like to drill down into it now. For any business at all, irrespective of the industry where you play in, I think it's important that you have things in buckets so that you're able to understand what is it exactly that you're doing and what the expectation is from your regulator. Now, for compliance, right, and of course, governance by extension, I think you should have a better view of putting everything in 5 buckets, like I said earlier. So the first bucket for me will always be corporate compliance. And of course, for corporate compliance, that's where you have things around the changes that is happening within your organization, whether you are registered as a business name, whether you are registered as a company. And if you are registered as a company, are you registered as a private company? Are you registered as a public company? Although I know for SMEs and MSMEs, I will be surprised if anyone is registered as a public company. So we just take the business name and maybe a limited partnership, LPs, and of course, private companies limited by shares. So for corporate compliance requirements, just look at all the changes that can happen. Are you changing directors? Are you changing your address? Are you moving offices? Are you changing maybe secretary? What exactly is it that you're doing? So everything around all the iterations that can happen within your organization will fall under corporate compliance. And of course, your annual returns, which you need to file annually. Then, of course, you have things around FRC and registration, Financial Reporting Council, if your entity falls as a public interest entity in line with the provisions of the FRCR. So the first bucket for every organization at all, every business, irrespective of the industry, will be around corporate compliance requirement. Now, the second will be around industry-specific compliance requirement. Like I said earlier, depending on the industry where you play in, whether you're in the capital market space, whether you are in the banking space, and in the banking space, are you of course, I won't say you're a commercial bank. I will expect that you have one of these fintech licenses, right? So are you in the telco space? Are you in the maritime or agriculture or even aviation space, and you're still playing small? So you need to understand the compliance requirements in your industry. So that's the second bucket. Like I said, the first bucket with everybody we have is the corporate compliance. It has to do with how your company is incorporated, your name, of course, your secretary, your directors, everything around the shareholding itself. So shareholding, address, and directors, that's what you have under corporate. And now your industry specific, again, depending on the industry where you're playing in, you can have a subset as well. For example, if you're in the financial services space, you'll be talking about AML, CFT, CPM requirements, right, that you need to focus on. You'll also be talking about maybe the product or services that you offer. There may be certain returns that you need to file. You need to know those returns, when you need to file them, how you need to file them, and to whom you're filing them with. Then the third one for me will be HR-related compliance requirements, right, which speaks about employee-related things, things around payee, your taxes, right, pension, NSITF, things around insurance scheme for your staff, right? Because as you scale and as you qualify, you need to get all these things into place. Then the fourth one, which is very big, you have finance, tax, and data protection related compliance requirement. For this one, you might not be able to do it internally on your own. You might need to outsource. And that's where you have organizations like Cardinal Professional Service. They can help you here. So because you're talking about things around your company income tax, VAT, WAT, you have things around common reporting standard if your organization is required to file. Then, of course, you have things around data protection itself, and you may need to engage the services of a DPCO to help you through this process. So that's the fourth bucket. Now, the last bucket is the one where we have others. And on this one, you are talking about different permits that you need to have in place, depending on where your office is sited. And if you're even operating remotely, you might not need to get pay any of those levies. Now, but if you have a small office, imagine that you're somewhere around Surulere and you have a signage outside, you need to pay for that signage. So again, you need to take all of this into consideration, because you don't want to be in your office one day and officers or staff of Surulere local government just come around and they just put X in front of your building because you've not paid for this. So things around parking as well, you need to also put that in place. So like I said, for compliance requirement, right, just put them in 5 buckets. Corporate, I talked about industry specific, I talked about finance, tax, and data protection related compliance requirements, your HR related, which is employee related, even if you are the only one or if you have another person, again, all the things that you need to put in place, have those documentation. And the last one is the one on orders. Now, speaking on what needs to be done when you've compartmentalized all of this, the first thing I would like to talk about is centralize your documentation. Just make sure you have a document management system. And for SMEs, anybody that is just starting out, or MSMEs, please make use of what you have, right? I tell everybody that you don't need an app or you don't need something fancy before you can comply. With Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, you yourself today, you can develop your own compliance calendar. And when you're developing a compliance calendar, what do you need to have there? What's the name of the reports? Who are you sending the report to? How are you sending it? Are you sending it via email? Are you uploading it on the portal? Are you required to submit to them in person? For example, public interest entities in Nigeria are required to submit the physical copy of their financial statement to the Financial Reporting Council 1 month or 30 days after they submitted to their primary regulator. And that submission, if you're in Lagos, happens around Ikeja. So you need to understand all of this. Are you submitting? Are you submitting to a dedicated, sorry, are you submitting to a dedicated email address? Are you uploading it on the portal? So with Microsoft Word or Excel, you can develop a compliance calendar. Who are you submitting? Another thing to have is a column for explanatory notes. And what are you putting in your explanatory notes? You are basically explaining how that return is filed. I'm sure people.
Is Aditola frozen? Can we hear her? Hello? Titi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I guess our video is frozen. We'll just wait for her to come back. She was actually, really listing them in numbers, and somebody would be worried like, all these compliance obligations. Don't just panic yet. You understand? That's why, Cardinal Professional Services is there for you to help you navigate all these challenges. And thank you, Aditola, for that free advert. Recommending us. So, but let me quickly, for time, I want to appeal with I think we need to wrap up in the next 15 to 17 minutes, and we want the responses to be, very brief. We still have a number of questions to take. Let me quickly move to Baba Tokwe. Adetola listed this retinue of compliance obligation. Is there any, role of technology in helping to simplify all this?
Yes, I think I would start from where Aditola stopped, and document management. As she said, you don't need one very robust software. Your Microsoft suite basically does most of what you will need to do, right? And maybe you take it a step further to put it on the cloud. So using maybe stuff like Google Sheets, Google Documents, Google Drive, or if you want to use the Microsoft alternatives to using OneDrive, that's possible. And what this helps you do, one part is to have a structured documentation of all the documents you have, right? So you can group it into all your HR documents, what are your legal documents, what are your, compliance documents, and you could also have your access management to know, who should have access to what kind of documents, if you are more than one in your business, and that would help you structure, because also it's access management is also part of compliance, where you need to make sure that everybody has the least possible privilege as possible to have access. So what that means is no person in the company has more access to documents that is higher than what they need to have access to. So that's very key. I would also say briefly, because of time, workflow automation is very key. And what that means is if you have processes that are very repeatable, so you maybe process do multiple times a day or you do every day, something like that would be what you would want to try to automate. So it's very key to, and there are many tools. There is Zapier, there are other tools you can use to automate some of your workflow for tasks that you typically do repeatedly. What that helps you do is you can focus more on your business, and you can keep, so there could be like compliance reminders, it's as simple as it is your calendar, where you can have a compliance calendar when is something due, when are these documents due, and your calendar can automatically remind you before time. So these are simple ways. I think one last thing I would also talk about, or maybe the last two things I'll talk about, is training. If you have, part of compliance is training within your business. And there are simple tools where you can just plug in, pay a little amount and do trainings on, for instance, if you are in tech or any finance related, you can do AML trainings. There are tools that can help you do that, and your company is compliant on that. The cyber security trainings, those are some of the things that could already help you, and there are technology tools, there are software or software as solution services that you can easily plug into for that. And I think lastly is also just using technology to have audit trail for everything and reporting for everything you are doing is very key for compliance. What that means is, so if you're, for instance, as I talked about document management, if you have that tool on the cloud, you can easily know who had access to what at what time, who made what updates. These things are very key for compliance, to be able to know, who had access to what, who made what change to what, when was this policy, worked on and stuff like that. So I think I'll stop there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much for those insights. Technology has a role to play in helping you, simplify the process, And welcome back, editor. I think your internet went bad, in the course
Apologies,
of
please.
the, but we got the comments largely. And I think I just want to move on to the next question for time. Babatope, I will still stay with you, and I know from privileged information that you've been able to raise some funds, and when I say funds now, from investors both locally and outside, Nigeria, based on your experience, funds is needed for business growth. You can't really move on to the next stage. But based on your engagement with these potential investors or investors, what are the must-haves for a business that that really gives that investors confidence that you spoke about? You said it just generically, but what are the must-haves in specifics, that really boost investors' confidence?
Yes. So I would say one of the very important things, having a very clear business strategy. And again, not just business strategy in your head, but well documented. And in your business strategy is one of the key things your investors want to see is how will I make my money back? It's good to have fancy ideas, or you want to change the world, you want to do this and that. That's very beautiful. But I think one thing I learned early, maybe the hard way, is even for investors that have impact objectives, like okay, I have environmental impact or health impact. I want to maybe that's what my investment thesis is about. I want to be able to invest in businesses that are solving maybe environmental problems. At the end of the day, it's nice to solve that problem, but it's also important for the investor to see how the money I put in would grow, and be of more value to the business. So that's very key. And keeping track of everything is very key. It can't be overemphasized. Documenting, your processes, your financials from day one. So I'd say at Big Bank, for instance, from day one, we already have accounting in place, all records filed, audited as needed, and it's something that would accelerate your fundraising process. Because when your investor sees that, okay, these people, they have a very clear business strategy, they have all their books, it's very transparent. There are no questions of is something hidden. Okay, this money here, what does this money here mean? Your financials are very clear. Your business processes are very clear. You are also, it's also very visible that you are constantly optimizing. I think that's also that's something I want to mention because it's understandable that when you're starting your business, you might not have the very best ideas on the one. But it's very key that you are, tracking your deliverables. So let's say you're into agriculture, for instance, you are tracking how much input in feeds, how much input in my process, how much am I paying, how am I optimizing the number of people working versus what my output is, what is my expense in the business, how am I constantly making sure that I'm not bloating my expense as my income increases for the business. An investor would also want to see how you are, constantly improving your operations, constantly improving the processes that you are doing within your business, and generally recording properly, reporting your finances, properly. Of course, all this together under the bracket of good, proper governance internally in your business are some of the key things that investors look out for.
Wow, thank you very much. Have a clear strategy, not just in your head, documented, have processes in place, keep your records, transparent in your dealings as much as possible. Thank you. But Aditola, let me quickly, I know you are running, you have another engagement, shortly, but let me quickly check with you before you take your leave, from taking it from where Babatokwe stopped, and for businesses that are looking into, okay, I've been doing this thing in Nigeria, can I possibly take it to Ghana, take it to Togo, take it to Cote d'Ivoire, or even the UK, and are there other things that, in addition to what Babatokwe has said, that may really position such business, to do that better successfully?
All right, thank you, and apologies for the network glitch.
It's fine.
Okay, so for businesses that are looking to expand, right, they will be looking at complex regulatory environment. Take, for example, what's obtainable in Nigeria, certainly, or let me say, most likely will be different from what you have in Ghana or Kenya. So because different countries have unique laws and regulations, you might need to probably engage the service of a consultant, right, to help you navigate that space so that you're not just relying on what you can read on Google yourself. So, and that on-site presence is very important, right? So for people that really understand the market and they've done it before, they can hold you as an SME or MSME to say, okay, this is the way to go about it. This is what you need to do to have strong compliance framework in place, and of course, to avoid penalties, whether regulatory or even legal issues as well. So, and of course, if you're looking to expand, you are getting into the realm of having global trust and reputation. So people are able to say, if you've done this in Nigeria and now you want to replicate it in other sub-Saharan African countries, okay, that means you must be getting something right. And you've done it in Nigeria, you've done it in Ghana, you've done it in Kenya, and now maybe you're looking to Uganda or Rwanda, right? So that credibility, you're able to enhance it. And of course, your brand will begin to have integrity as you go along. Then you're able to also manage cross-border risk, because you don't want a situation where in Kenya, right, you are in the news for the negative because something is definitely wrong there. There's no how it's not going to affect your brand equity and of course integrity back home in Nigeria. And you must make sure you have this ethical standard cross-border. And once you have all of this in place, if you're applying to other countries, right, you should have, don't let me be absolute about it. You should have smooth market entry if you're trying to go into another country, because when you're applying to the regulator rights for license, they will typically ask you, so where are the other places where you have this? And then you can provide to them to say, oh, look, we've done this in A, B, C, D countries, and this is our track record. And for countries that, of course, they have their heart going right together, they can compare notes. They can check to say, okay, so what is it that you've done in Kenya? What is it that you've done in Mauritius? Of course, you're trying to replicate in this other tax haven. They can check. And of course, when you have smooth market entry, right, you begin to have strategic partnerships that you can leverage, and of course, it can help. At the end of the day, all of this thing we're talking about is bottom line, right? Profit making, especially for those of us in the private sector, right? So, and then you begin to have long-term growth. And with this long-term growth, you have adaptability, your business is strong and you can scale and do some other things. But before I leave, I just want to quickly touch on the point I was saying about document management system. Once you have this document management system in place, make sure you also standardize your procedures, have checklists in place. It's very important that you have checklists. Action point. The next thing is to have people, right? People that can help you. I know that for some industries, you need to have in-house, maybe compliance risk management teams, right? But for some industries, right, maybe they are not that heavily regulated. Say, for example, you're in the agri space, right? So you can outsource, right? You can get somebody to do these things for you, right? And that's why we have these consultants that are hosting this webinar. You can approach them to help in things like that. Assign roles and responsibilities. And I often say it's not just enough to have people. Please ensure that people are trained. I know Baba Tope talked on that. Train them internally and of course also train them externally. And like you said, automate where possible and make sure you have like backup data for the information you have. And then regulatory audit and review. One last point before I leave is regulatory engagement is a big deal in this environment. You have to engage your regulator. I know a lot of us, we are fast on the keyboard. Our advice SMEs and MSMEs not to be keyboard warriors. You have to interface. A lot of emotional intelligence, tact, and wisdom comes into regulatory engagement in Nigeria. And because your regulator will be with you throughout your existence, right? They have the capacity to make that period to be like a smooth sail or to be like a boat that is about to, just stray away. So you just have to find a way to balance everything. Thank you. But I think I can still stay a bit. I just got notification that my internal meeting is being delayed, so we can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so glad about that. I was about to ask for 5 more minutes, but let me quickly stay with you, Anita, before we go, and if I can quickly check, there is this myth that says that corporate governance issues, compliance issues are pretty costly, and if you look at from the budget perspective for this kind of businesses, they may not have the deep pocket. Is it true that putting this process in place, is it true that it's costly? And if the answer is yes, are there ways that people can manage the cost around it? Because for me, I think it's just a necessary cost that, people have to find a way around. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. I think I'm going to start out with a popular saying for folks in the compliance space. I'm sure they've come across it, and it's attributed to the former U.S. Deputy General. So what he said is that if you think compliance is expensive, right, try non-compliance, especially if you're in a space in Nigeria and you have to deal with maybe like regulatory inspection, maybe inspection from your regulators, everything will be at standstill. Even if you have board meetings, you'll be called out because even the directors will tell you, you need to go and attend to your regulator because you're able to have board meetings because you have a license. And this regulator can tell you, sorry, we can't even go ahead with that meeting. We are here for inspection, or somebody wrote this petition against your business, so you need to attend to us. So if you think, oh, we are doing market song, we're on TikTok, we're on Snapchat, and we're doing all of these beautiful campaigns, very nice. But if you think compliance is expensive, just try non-compliance. And it's not a threat, right? I know there are complaints that, oh, these things are too expensive. Why do we need to go about this? And I said this earlier, please start from where you are and scale. Now, compliance calendar, like I said, everyone can have compliance calendar on Microsoft Word. You just need to know how to create a table, or you can use Excel, where maybe for lawyers like me that don't like numbers, so I run away from Excel sheets. So I adopt what I know how to use, which is Microsoft Word. Just create a simple table, right, that can explain what it is you are trying to do. So just make use of the tool that you have. Now, document management system, you don't need to go and look for a vendor. On your system, right, create folders and name them properly. Honestly, just create folder, and in the folder, create subfolders and have naming convention, how to save documents. For example, my team members, when they scan document to me and the document come as Xerox, ABC, 1, 2, 3, 4, like name documents. Adetola Adele underscore resume or CV or compliance calendar, ABC Limited, today's date. If there's an update it. Now, if you save document properly, right? If you go to that folder, it helps you are able to search. Other members of your team are able to search. Now, if you're not going to be with that organization forever, other people coming after you, they will make use of that folder. So please use what you have, then scale. Of course, as a scale, you can compare, say, for example, you can compare the budget of a sole proprietor with the budget of an access bank. If you get the point I'm trying to make, they can go all out. Their ERM itself, their core banking application, some of them, they are specifically built. They go in millions of dollars. All these, is it Oracle or Pinnacle? Man, I don't know what these banks use now. Those things are expensive. So you don't need all of, so if you just use what you have, then just build gradually. Then stay in touch with community. If you stay in touch with community, right, you will have a sense of what other people are doing. So you will not try to reinvent the wheel. So you can check with other people, even on LinkedIn. Oh, you see you are in the same space with somebody else. You can ask person, hello, please, what are you using to do this thing? I mean, people will be nice enough to, okay, this is what we're using, right? So, and they can explain to you. So please use what you have, then scale, just scale gradually. Look for alternatives online and all of that. Take, for example, governance space, right? There's this thing called board management software, basically for you to put together all your board meeting papers. Now, I know a number of people cannot afford Boardable. A number of people cannot afford board effect. But bro, if you go on, what's this thing called? On Google today, you go on I love PDF, all the small PDF document, all the board meeting papers, please upload them there and click on the button that says merge PDF. You have your board pack. You just need internet to do that. So you don't need to be on Boardable, something fancy, or board effect to be able to do that. So just, again, thank God for technology. You can research and make sense of this is what I can use. So my advice would be that, yes, it might seem expensive, but please let's just try and learn and just scale from where we are. Yes, I know cost of investigating issues. You can put your lawyers or your consultant or retainers, and of course they can take things for you on a broader as opposed to one. So let me just stop there.
Wow. So I think it's a good point. Thank you very much, Etola, for raising those concerns. If you are just joining us, you are joining our live webinar on leveraging effective compliance and governance for governance framework for business growth. And the conversation has been really eye-opening for us today. And Etola mentioned the fact that communities can help, and that's why we have carefully, put together this community that can provide real-time, engagement for you. This is a channel, no data breach that will be happening here. It's just for you to follow this channel and get real-time updates, on what we believe can be value adding to your business. You can also on that platform look at our inquiries contact and send us messages to attend to your real-time issues. So I believe we all on this call, we are scanning these QR codes, to join the relevant group. One will take you to where you can follow us on all our social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook and the likes, YouTube, and the other one is a dedicated channel for small businesses, tips on how to put all these processes in place and structure, so that you can, get your business on the path of growth. And lastly, is our general WhatsApp channel where we communicate all our publications, all our insights week in, week out. So scan this QR code and get going on getting the benefit of joining this community. We will be wrapping up this conversation in the last 10 minutes. So we are going in the next 10 minutes. So we are going to the last segment of the conversation. And I believe our panelists have been doing a wonderful job. And this time around, I want to appeal that we restrict our responses to just 1 minute, per panelist, so that we can run through all the questions that are popping in from our audiences, Titi, if I can quickly come to you, Detola said something about this cost, it may be costly, it may be, you understand, challenging, but you just have to find a way of putting it in place. Are there cheaper options? Titi, are there cheaper options?
Cheaper, well, thank you everyone for all your contributions and all. So are there cheaper options to compliance? Well, the only way to make these things cheap is for you to, from the word go, start with your own documentation, start in-house. All the things that Atokwe has talked about, the editor has talked about, if you have a good documentation, it saves you a lot of costs already. And so it's not about what you spend, it's about what you're saving for your business. So if you can ensure that you have put the right tools in place, easy, free tools for your business, for you to document your papers, can easily scan that. You don't have to buy a scanner for you to scan. You have scanner on your phone, scan your documents, put them, file them somewhere on your computer or on the Google Drive or whatever storage drive you have decided for your business. That's how it gets cheap. Except that, and then if you have built in that culture of ensuring that proper documentation are in place, it will save you a lot of money. So documentation all the way. Just start from there, set the process, you have a system, you have a calendar, so you can track things already and not missing important dates for your filing and all.
Okay,
So
thank you. Your 1 minute is past.
Yeah.
Thank you. Titi is just trying to be diplomatic, around the answer. If you're actually seeking cheaper alternatives, it will definitely be based on the facts and circumstances around your business, And I think the first step around it is to assess your corporate governance and compliance framework need. You understand? Before you start paying for what you don't even need. You understand? You understand? That's first step of assessing it can take away some other costs that you may be thinking is scaring you away. You understand? If you have not done that assessment, you don't even know the cost yet. So you can't conclude that this thing is very, very expensive yet, because you don't have a full picture of what you need to do and how to go about it. And I think that is where, engaging, consulting, Titi, myself, and the rest of the team on issue like this can potentially help you put everything in context, and these days, if you don't do these things, the growth that you want to achieve in the course of the year, you won't even get there. You understand? But when you do these things, engage a consultant to keep track of it, you are able to focus on your business and begin to do the business while your consultant is busy, you understand, helping you that all this framework are in place. And if from a cash flow perspective, you can even have an arrangement, you understand, to say, is as the cash is coming into the business that I will be paying you consultant to, you understand. So those kind of options are there that you can. But let me quickly hear from Baba Tokwe, how have you been able to manage the cost of compliance when it comes to the startups that you run?
Yes, thank you. I think Titi mentioned a lot, and Adetola also. Make use of the tools you already have. Have a documentation first approach. At the very least, you have a phone, even if you don't have a laptop, or you have a laptop, document all your processes from the beginning. Make sure you have a copy of all your documents, everything, like document everything, even for so for specifically in tech, for instance, before we do anything, we document every aspect of the product, every aspect of the processes. For HR, there's documentation for every process, so that way, at least you are tracking, because one of the, as Emmanuel said, one of the first steps would be to assess, right? So, and if a consultant was to assess whether you are compliant, then, and there's no documentation, you basically increased your cost because then you need to start documenting at that time, so document already, make use of tools that you already have, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Doc, and also leverage, maybe something I would add is leverage maybe partnerships that you have, or maybe, so what I mean is, if you have someone that is a friend that has a business that does consulting. If one important one is also cardinal professional services is a very good one, where you can get at a very good price. You can get quality.
Thank you, Toko, for that free referral. Okay. Okay, thank you. I think I have two more questions to take, and then we will call it, a day. Where is Titi? Titi, you may need to put on your video, as we wrap up this conversation. And I want to check from an employee perspective. Aditola, what are the things, sometimes you just get frustrated. Oh, I'm trying to put things in order, but employees are not just, cooperating. Document this thing. We just want to get the work done, or God, let's do this work and all that. What are the things that you can do, or what are the things that you can put in place to incentivize, employees to also cultivate the culture of this compliance framework and corporate governance issues?
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. I'll just talk on two things that we've done in my organization. So when we have quarterly trainings on AML, CFT, CPF, because we know it's a quote and unquote boring topic, right? We throw in teasers, right? Just to get people to participate. And we've had instances where we just put gift card. I remember last year we put like ticket for people to go and see this stage play at Terra Culture. So when we introduced that, we saw that people really want to join the training. And of course, the questions are not just easy peasy that you can get. You have to think to show that, okay, you're part of the training. So if you have some of this incentive, of course, it's not going to be every day before people think, oh, compliance will even give you gift card for Juma or any other thing like that. So you can have like gift cards or other rewards. Take for example, if you have like if you're in the financial services space and you have like a mobile application, so you can have maybe like referral codes that you can use just for them. Another thing is we have like compliance awards, but for SMEs and MSCs, so maybe as they scale, so you can just say, oh, this person in sales, this person in this department has been amazing in supporting compliance initiative, compliance and all that. So you can just have this compliance champion of the month, just give them maybe a certificate. You can design it on Canva and just say drum roll. I know for example, in my organization, I got an award that I'm one of the staff that like the post a lot on social media. So just feel good moment, drum roll everyone. Oh, Baba Tokbe is our compliance champion of the month. So people can just put that in, put them up for trainings as well. I mean, and then public acknowledgement. Everybody wants to be acknowledged that, oh, we are doing well. So maybe we have TGIF, or even end of the year, recognize them as well. So other people are encouraged to do it. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Baba Tokwe, let me get your comment on that. What are the tips? What are the things you've done to encourage voluntary compliance?
Yes, I like what Aditola said. Very, very key to always, celebrate, when people do well. I think one important thing is to lead by example on compliance, right? So For instance, if I think that's one of the things that has really helped in everywhere I've worked to date, which is, if you are talking about documentation, then lead by documenting yourself, because, people you need to set a good example by what you are doing, not just by what you say or what you try to enforce. So it becomes a bit easier when, so I can give a very practical example. At somewhere, I noticed that actually, engineers don't necessarily like to document. So, but I put in a process that ensures that before it gets to my point, it has to be documented, right? And what that meant was the product won't ship if it's not documented properly. And the engineers want the product to ship. So it comes to the second point of building a process around what you want to enforce. You understand? It makes it a bit easier to enforce compliance. So I know that before I go live, I need to have documented this as a checklist for it. So, and myself also, everything I want to do, I document it. So it becomes hard for someone else to say, okay, I won't document because you understand. So celebrating people that document is key. Also leading by example, whatever is compliant, you also be compliant yourself, and document yourself, and show a good example. It's very key.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babatokwe, for that. The tone at the top is very important. Sending a strong tone at the top that I'm doing it though, so there's no excuse for everybody not to do it. And because we believe I think training is also very important. Because when people don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, then it then becomes very religious for them to do. And if you have a training that explains the impact of non-compliance or not following processes, on the business, then everybody may likely, fall in line. I will be taking our final comment very shortly, as we put an end to this conversation. Once again, I see a question from our live audience. Can we get the live recording of this webinar? This webinar is currently streamed on YouTube. So if you follow our YouTube page, you will go back and relive the experience. It will also be distributed on all our social media platforms. So you can just do yourself that advantage of following us across all our channels. The QR code will come up again, after this conversation as we wrap up. So Adesola, let me quickly take your final comment for our audience on how to leverage compliance and governance framework for growth.
All right. Let me just summarize it this way.
Sorry, 30 seconds.
Okay. Let me just summarize it this way for people to use what they have, scale gradually, stay in touch with the community, and of course, engage the services of consultants. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, spot on. Babatokwe, your final comment, please.
Yes, I'll just say document. Start with documentation, document every process, and be very deliberate to measure every process you are doing, and to the end, to be able to optimize and improve, in an agile method. So I think that's the key thing I want to mention.
Thank you very much, sir. And Titi, your final comment, please.
Okay, so the keyword here is business growth. We're all looking towards business growth. So it's not just to know about compliance and governance. We have read so much. Commitment to executing is important. So just be committed to the governance and framework and then set up things within your business to help with the business growth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this conversation. Our audience, you guys are the real gem, for staying through all. I can see the number did not reduce from the beginning to the end. That shows that we truly had a very, engaging conversation. Thank you, Mr. Babatokwe. Thank you, Titi Bakare, and thank you, Aditola. My final parting word is that, compliance and governance cost is that necessary investment that you need to make to unlock growth. If you refuse to make this investment, you are doing also. You understand? And also can only last as putting food on your table if you must truly build something that is sustainable, that will strive and then live beyond you, the visionary of that business, corporate governance and effective compliance cost is one of the most important investments that you can make as a business owner. It starts from you saying, I'm not going to be the one approving that payment. Let the accountant do it. If accountant doesn't approve payment for me, that means I'm not being paid. You know, he has his own reason for that, you know, accountability. I believe it has been a wonderful experience, you know, and once again, thank you to the audience and our panelists. Once again, I will be putting on the screen, you know, the QR code for you to scan to follow all our communities and channels, you know, for you to get real life update on this. Be reminded that this material is also available live on our YouTube page, and it will be distributed across all our channels also. So thank you once again for being part of this conversation. This interaction typically comes up once every quarter. This is the second edition we're having this year, and we want you to watch out on our social media platform for our next conversation that will be happening in the next 3 months. Thank you very much, everyone that joined. Bye-bye for now.